There is a place, not here or there, but somewhere in between. There is a space in the thin air that really can't be seen. If you listen and observe, you may be surprised. Some may call it Camelot or even paradise. Some may say you cross a bridge, others through a door. But all I know about this place is that I call it Evermore. Evermore.
Good evening, sweet spirits. Welcome to the show. My name is Suzanne Sorrell, and I'm the host of the Evermore Paranormal Network. On this episode, we're going to be talking about haunted Ramblewood, and our special guest tonight is the paranormal man himself, Mike Stevenson. So please welcome him to the show.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, as always, Suzanne.
Well, thank you for coming back. I enjoy our conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about haunted Ramblewood.
Oh, boy.
Who else to talk about that than you? You have done, as you were saying just before we started filming, you stayed overnight, or have you investigated how many times?
I've concluded 58 investigations there. Mm-hmm. And I've spent, whenever I do that, I'm there for the whole weekend. And even when other people are with me and they come and they, investigate, after they're gone, because a lot of times they won't stay over, they just stay till wee hours in the morning and then leave. And I keep telling you, you're missing the good spots, we're not staying over. But, they'll leave and check their evidence, and I'll tell them, well, after you left, this is what happened.
Oh, yeah.
And it is interesting because quite often I'm there by myself, wandering around the building, talking to the spirits. And
your second home, pretty much.
It is, really. It truly is. And the spirits kind of like, they know me. A long time ago, I used to joke about when I walk into a room, I would say, the spirits are saying, just continue what we're doing. It's just Mike, he's one of us. And truly, that's kind of what has occurred. And I think it has a lot to do with the methodism I use for investigating. I treat them as other people because really they were people. And still are people.
Oh, yeah.
It's just they don't have this, if I can use an old Star Trek term, talk about a 98% sack of water. So that's basically what a body is. And, you take that away, you have nothing but the soul. So these are what those spirits are. They're the souls of the person they once was. Now,
exactly.
Without trying to get into it, there are other demons and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not actually including them at this point. I'm just talking about the good-natured spirits who visit there.
Exactly. Well, if anybody is an expert on Ramblewood, it's you.
Because
you have written, besides staying there as many times as you have, investigating and so on, you've written a couple books about it. So tell me about these books. Tell me about these. What are the titles? When did you write them? And I know I read both of them, so they have all the historical background on them.
Yes.
So let's hold them up and.
Alrighty. The Worthington White House is kind of like a Reader's Digest version of the other book. It gives you the highlights, specialized information as to who lived there, how old they were when they died, what years they were alive, and how circumstances made them more evident in what they were doing, let's say urban legends and stuff like that. There's quite a few of them. And the other book, the larger one, is actually a printed PowerPoint lecture that I did one time, and everybody kept saying, hey, where can I get that? But there were a few who didn't have computers, so I said, well, maybe I'll just print the PowerPoint. So that's what this one is. It's much larger, but it is slide for slide the PowerPoint presentation about the Worthington. In fact, it's titled the Worthington Lecture.
So you can get both of those books. Like, if go to your website, theparanormalman.com, if you want to find out more about the books, right?
Definitely, definitely.
So tell me, since these both seem to focus on the history, tell me about. It wasn't always called Ramblewood. Can you tell me, the beginnings and how it's gotten to where it is today, historically?
Definitely. The Worthington family was the original owners of the property. And interestingly enough, in Maryland, through my research, I've found that quite a bit of Maryland, the cities, all the older cities, either had something to do with the Worthingtons or once was their property. So there's a big history in all that. Captain John Worthington came over from England, and him and his family, of course, was rather well known in Lancashire, is where they originally came from. And as they came over to the United States, well, it wasn't the United States back then, but they were here in the 1700s. And what's interesting in Maryland, there's quite a few shoreline cities that are very prominent. And they were once properties of the Worthingtons, I found out. So even the famous Ocean City that everyone talks about in Maryland, of course there's a lot of Ocean City, but the one from Maryland, that was basically a Worthington property. And even going over to the capital in Annapolis, Annapolis was Captain John Worthington's personal homestead. And he actually willed to his grandson the property, they call it on the other, in the deed it's listed as the other side of the river. The land there's a big section of property, and now it's actually the United States Naval Academy.
Wow.
So there's so much history involved with the Worthingtons. And they were Quaker people too. So they kind of like stood to themselves because for some reason, and I've never been able to figure this out though, how and why people generally shied away from Quakers. It's like taboo, you don't want to mess with them people, Well, okay, they dressed differently than everyone. They had basically a certain style of clothing they wore, and they did things differently. Honestly, they were more honest people.
Definitely. And I think in your book, I remember reading that the Ramblewood house, the Worthington house, is in Darlington,
yes,
Maryland.
Darlington, Maryland.
And Darlington means?
It actually means Quaker.
Yeah.
It's a German word for Quaker.
So, and I think, did we not, when we came over when we came out and filmed, wasn't there, or isn't it off Quaker Road? There was a Quaker Road over that way too. I mean,
yes,
just
there is a Quaker
there.
Road there. What's interesting, the road that it's on is Silver Road. And at one time, there was a family there who actually named that road, but they were the first ones to name that access road. The road now is called Shoresville Road or Shore Road. It originally actually included the Worthington name with it. The old, it was called Worthington Shore Road and Worthington Shore. Those were actually part of the title of the words. And the whole area, particularly the big house, the White House on the Ramblewood property, was involved with the Underground Railroad.
Right.
And it's interesting because there's been some talk back and forth. Some people were skeptical about saying that they were part of the Underground Railroad. But truthfully, I found out through actually interviewing people in adjacent towns that there is a lot of evidence showing that William Worthington was directly involved with the Underground Railroad. And it kind of follows through with the Worthington family being Quakers, the fact that they did not approve of having servants. I mean, there was people there who worked, but I think the old term was a bonded servant. So they were there and getting reimbursed somehow for the work they're doing.
Wow. It's a very interesting history. And we're going to have to take a quick break.
Sure thing.
And we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Suzanne Sorrell, the host and producer. You're watching the Evermore Paranormal Network.
My journey skating for the gold taught me a lot, but my journey with breast cancer has been one of my greatest teachers.
Every woman's breast cancer is unique. Be Wiser educates and empowers women to take control of their breast cancer treatment plan and help navigate their own path beyond 5 years.
Talk to your doctor about information and tests to personalize a treatment plan that fits your needs. I did. Be informed, be wiser, support survivors like us.
So welcome back. I'm talking with Mike Stevenson, the paranormal man, and we are talking about haunted Ramblewood. So, Mike, you just told us a really brief history of the place. It was Worthington House historically, but
yes.
now it's called Ramblewood. How did that happen? What's going on about that title?
Back in the early 50s and late 40s, a group of people got together. Basically, I think it was basically done through family. Started the Ramblewood Corporation and built a campgrounds there. Now, as I understand, it always was kind of a campground, but never to the extent it is now, where you have swimming pools, cabins, and all that. It was just a rustic area with some camping. And of course, the house was always there, because the house was built back in 1841. So it's at the top of the hill of the whole property, and it really stands out well.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is.
When we came to the property recently to film, I mean, I love those types of houses. I would love to have that house, as I told you. Now, so you, like I said earlier, when we were talking, you do a lot of investigations there. You kind of run events there as well, right? I mean, you do.
Yes.
How does that work? If somebody wants to come there to investigate.
If somebody wants to come there to investigate, they can contact me through my email and send me a message, and I'll converse with them. They can also call my phone, the Paranormal Man number, and I'll discuss with them, you know, what they would need to do, how much it would cost, and what have you, to be there. Well,
I know, because when we came, there was no indoor plumbing in the wintertime.
Right.
Limited electricity, right? No heat. It was.
Well,
I mean, it's roughing it. It is
really roughing it, unfortunately. One day, maybe the electricity will be boosted up a little bit. It's just that because there's no heat in the building, everyone has to have their own little electric heater, and it being an old building, if two people run heaters side by side, one room to the next, they're usually on the same breaker, and it's sort of like, if you remember that old TV show Green Acres, where you could plug in a 1 and a 3, but you can't use a 2 and a 5. It's kind of like that.
Well, yeah, I heard, you know, after we left, that I think that happened that night. Yeah, but anyway, it's worth it, though.
It is worth it.
You know, I've heard the stories, and I really hadn't heard about the place, truthfully, until I started talking to you.
Right.
And so, what kind of paranormal claims, what kind of activity do people claim that they've experienced?
Well, there's quite a few urban legends that kind of like work hand in hand with the investigations there. One particular, and I'm actually working on a book for this, there's 2 different females who were murdered there. And the evidence of this was never really put out. It was an urban legend, for instance, now the 25-year-old girl named Mary. The urban legend says that she hung herself from the rafters in the cupola. It's got a large cupola on the 3rd floor. And that being urban legend, as any urban legend, there's facts in it, but it's not necessarily completely true. Right. So, you know, yes, she was hung, but in truth, and since I am writing a book on it, I'm not going to include everything, but I will say, no, she didn't hang herself. She was murdered. So that's kind of the truth, and I've been working on a book on that since 2009.
So when do you think that's coming out?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm going over the last hump. At this point, we're talking about not just a cold case murder, we're talking about a frozen case murder. Wow. Because these murders occurred in the mid to late 1800s. And all the evidence has been boxed up and put away somewhere. I did get some information, for instance, saying that the archives person for the Friends Church, remember being Quakers, they attended the Friends Church, has some of the information locked up. Since I'm not an actual relative, I can't really get copies of it or find out what's in there. At this point, I don't even think that there's really any descendants of that actual family. Not to say there's not Worthingtons all over the place.
Right.
I've had people say to me, well, I know about this person, that person. And they lived in the Darlington area, and they were buried in the Darlington Cemetery. So where do they fit in? Well, they were offshoots from the family, or maybe not directly the initial family, but the Worthingtons was such a large, it was like being a Smith. There was such a large family that there are different people with the last name of Worthington who were not necessarily part of the Captain John Worthington's actual history.
Right. So obviously, if this Mary, either way, it makes sense that she'd be still at the location. Whether she hung herself or was murdered, there are two reasons why she would still be there.
Most definitely.
So you said there were 2 murders there. Is there another story?
Yes.
Another woman, you said?
And what's really interesting is, this is a younger girl, okay? She was actually 16 when she died, unfortunately. There's no evidence anywhere about her death, other than the fact that she died. And what's intriguing to me in a Sherlock Holmes type of way is that when I went through the archives of the local newspaper, the only thing in the newspaper listing about this younger girl's death was, it said, Emily Worthington died yesterday at age 16. That's the entire obituary. Now, that may sound normal or an average, obituary, which it is in a sense. But here's the odd part. This is a daughter of the richest man in town, and the grandfather was the editor-in-chief of the newspaper it was in.
Right. So it sounds like a cover-up.
A cover-up, exactly.
Sounds like a cover-up. They didn't want, they could have easily published the story.
Yes.
But since the father was wealthy, they were able to cover it up.
Right.
So yeah, I see where because if somebody dies at 16, now obviously it would be, questioned.
Yes.
Back then, it would still be questioned. That 16 was still young.
Right. Even though they're Quakers, and at 16, basically she's an old maid, so to speak, because they start marrying you off when you're 12, and sometimes they even put together I'm not sure what the word would be. They prearrange a marriage at birth almost. So that often happens. Now, in this case, I don't believe the girl was involved with anyone. There's just no evidence about that.
Okay. Well, we're going to take another break, and we will be right back.
Hi, everyone. Mike Stevenson here from the Paranormal Man organization, and you're watching the Evermore Paranormal Network.
Losing weight's a lot harder than gaining it, but with every step, I lower my risk for type 2 diabetes and heart disease, and that makes every step very much worth the effort.
Learn how you can help stop diabetes. Visit checkupamerica.org or call 1-800-DIABETES.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Mike Stevenson, the Paranormal Man, and we're talking about haunted Ramblewood. Now, the last segment, we were talking about some of the claims, a couple women that were murdered on the property, and he's writing a book about that.
Oh, definitely.
Now, are they going to be 2 separate books, or?
No, it's all included in one book.
One book, okay.
And it's kind of forensically written because of the evidence that is available. It's so few and far between. I had to assemble it just as if I was doing a forensic CSI type investigation.
Oh yeah.
And I enjoy a lot of Sherlock Holmes stories. So the concept he generally uses is actually close to being forensic, even though that word was never used in any of the material written about Sherlock Holmes. But it's that methodism that I've been using to dig up information, and unfortunately, there's so little connecting information. It's a shame.
Yeah. So, what kind of? I mean, you've investigated there, stayed there many times.
Many times.
And what kind of evidence have you obtained there? And I also want to hear about the urn as well before we wrap.
Okay, good. Well, I've gotten all kinds of evidence, and a lot of EVPs, which I call EMIs, electromagnetic intelligence. It's more of a scientific term because the information received has an intelligence to it. That's why they like to use the word intelligence. And I've learned that it is a electromagnetic pulse that they're sending out. The words that get recorded, and the reason why they get recorded on a tape or through a microphone or even digitally is because it's an electromagnetic wave. And that's how the devices pick up the EMI. And what's interesting is it is really an amplified brainwave.
Amazing.
Yes.
Is this your terminology? Did you
Well, yeah, I'm the one who coined
that?
the EMI.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people say, well, I'm hearing them. No, your brain is hearing the thought wave, but you're not hearing them out of your ear because you got to remember, we have ears and mouths to speak and hear, and that's how we communicate amongst. They are only the spirits. Spirits don't have mouths. I know probably there's a listener dialing up right now saying, oh, I know for a fact they got a mouth because I've seen it. Well, in an apparition you may have, but that doesn't mean they actually have a mouth. An apparition can appear as almost anything, including themselves. I have photographs of a person from the cupola of the Worthington White House, and they're showing up as about like a 12-year-old child. And truthfully, the woman that I've determined it was, she was like 75 when she died. So it really doesn't matter when they died, what they look like. They don't always show up that way. If their thought, their information that they most remember, and that's what you got to really look at, the fact the spirits are an electronic charge, and if their fondest memory was when they were 12, they can very easily show up as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I believe that because I've gotten pictures of my mom that passed away.
Right.
And she's showing herself. I mean, I got
Right.
different ages, different. The first time when she was, it was when my wedding day. So I can actually show you the picture next to her, what she looked like on my wedding day.
Right.
And another time when she was happy, like her happiest, when she was the weight that she always wanted to be, and so on. So I mean, they do, and I was wondering why she was showing herself to me in different ways.
Wow.
And the night she died, actually, I had a dream, and she was able to walk again, was 30-something, was the person she always wanted to be.
Exactly.
So in the last minute, can you tell us about the urn?
The urn, the famous urn. And interestingly, it was left, you brought it there and left it up on the mantelpiece in the library. And you gave us a little history about the fact that the urn whistles. But what's really an interesting thing that happened, I had an electric radiator type heater sitting in front of the fireplace because the flue is no longer capable of being used for a fireplace because of its age. It needs to be rebuilt, which I'm hoping the owner does sometime, because I'd love to be able to light a fire in that fireplace. It would just feel so great. But we had the heater sitting in front of the fireplace, and of course the urn was on the mantelpiece right there at the fireplace. And myself and two other people who were investigating there, we were having a little chat back and forth. And all of a sudden, we started hearing a whistle. Now, all of us were in attendance when you spoke about the Whistling Urn, and we kind of like turned and looked at the urn and then looked at each other because all three of us heard it, and we even said, "Did you hear that?" "Yeah, I heard that."
Wow. So it was close to the urn.
Yes.
So yeah, when I would hear the whistle, when I had the object in my possession, it would always seem like the urn would be about 10 feet away from me when I'd hear it, and always attributed it to the trophy. Right. Well, Mike, we've run out of time again.
I know.
Please tell everybody, show your books, tell them where they can get the books again, or find out more about Ramblewood.
Find out about Ramblewood and the books, just contact me through email or by phone. It's available at the Paranormal Man website. You can find out all you need to know to find out about the book. Give me a call or send me an email, and I can send you an autographed copy. These are also available at Amazon, so you can get them there, but if you get them from me, I'll autograph them.
Yes. Thank you, Mike.
You're quite welcome.
Thanks again for coming.
It's a pleasure.
I just want to sign off here. Thank you for watching, and the Evermore Paranormal Network. By the way, the books he was holding up are my books that he's autographed. So I was very excited to have those and read those. Until next time, peace out.
So in the end, what have I said is only that I'm sure. For all I know about this place is that I call it Evermore.